I by no means anticipated to fall in love, in particular no longer inside the manner it befell. It wasn't fireworks or the type of love you study approximately in novels, at the least no longer at the beginning. It started out in the most unassuming way with verbal exchange. Simply two human beings exchanging phrases, sitting throughout from each other in a crowded room filled with noise and distraction. But in some way, we managed to pay attention each other clearly. She was the type of female who didn't announce herself while she entered a room. However, some way, human beings continually observed her. Not because she demanded interest, however, because her presence was honest, and honesty has a bizarre way of making itself known. When I met her, I used to be still stuck up inside the idea of affection being about appearances. Maybe it was how I was raised or the way the arena around me continuously fed me the concept that splendor and charm were the highest currencies in relationships. But she dismantled that thought so results easily that I didn't even comprehend I used to be letting go of it. She wasn't seeking to prove something. She wasn't attempting to electrify anybody. She didn't get dressed to invite compliments, nor did she talk to win desire. She changed into sincerely herself, and that became enough. Her skin, the color of warm mahogany, glowed within the golden light of past dew afternoon. But it wasn't her complexion that stuck me. It turned into the readability in her phrases, the way she looked you in the attention and never blinked whilst telling the fact. She told me early on that she wasn't here to play games, no longer in a confrontational manner, but in a way that stated she respected her very own time and wouldn't waste yours either. It was fresh, even disarming. The general public, myself included, generally start with masks, little facades to cover flaws, to hide fears, to seem extra appealing. However, she didn't hassle. Once I asked her what she wanted out of life, she didn't hesitate. She said joy of peace, of a sense of belonging. She noted trying to wake up every day and feel suitable about who she became when nobody else became looking. It became the type of solution which you not often pay attention because most people don't allow themselves to reflect on consideration on it, not to mention talk it aloud. She wasn't flawless. That's every other issue that drew me in. Her honesty extended beyond what she desired. It stretched into who she turned into, which includes the elements of herself she hadn't completely found out. She admitted her insecurities with the sort of calmness that it made you comprehend that vulnerability can be an energy. She didn't fake to have all of it collectively. She didn't smile to cowl unhappiness or giggle to mask pain. If she became hurt, she stated so. If she became confused, she asked questions. And while she loved something, or a person, she stated it without shame. What made her one of a kind wasn't simply that she became sincere, however, that she had made a type of peace with the truth. There's been no bitterness in her voice, no anger while she shared tough reviews. She had lived through matters that would have made many people guarded or cynical. However, come what may, she'd come through it all with her coronary heart intact. Not just intact, however open. And that openness made me want to be better. I didn't even be aware it in the beginning, how being around her made me shed my very own layers of pretense. I started out talking extra freely, no longer out of rebellion, but due to the fact I felt secure. Secure, sufficient to tell her my fears, my dreams, the instances I'd messed up, and the components of myself I used to be still seeking to forgive. Falling in love together with her didn't manifest in a single day. It was a sluggish unraveling. 1,000 small moments that strung themselves together quietly, till one day I checked out her and realized I'd fallen. The manner she laughed, whilst something really amused her, along with her head thrown, returned, and no trace of self-awareness. The manner she spoke to strangers, kind however company, constantly knowing precisely in which her limitations were. The manner she in no way permit me break out with less than the fact, no longer in a judgmental way, but in a way that held me responsible to my very own integrity. She requested questions that made me assume, not due to the fact she wanted to interrogate me, but due to the fact she wanted to apprehend me. And whilst she listened, she genuinely listened, like every word mattered. It made me want to select my words more carefully, now not out of worry, but out of recognize. There have been instances I stumbled. Instances while my own luggage made me retreat, or while my ego made me protective. But she in no way used my missteps as weapons. Alternatively, she met them with honesty. She advised me when I hurt her, certainly and calmly, and she or he expected me to take duty. She additionally told me when I made her feel loved. She didn't wait for grand gestures or ideal timing. If she changed into thankful, she said so. If she widespread something approximately me, she didn't maintain it in. She didn't allow pleasure get within the way of connection, and I realized how uncommon that changed into her honesty wasn't always easy. On occasion, it found out things I didn't want to stand, about myself, about the arena, approximately how relationships actually paintings. But it turned into usually freeing. Because together with her, there was no guessing, no on foot on eggshells, no thinking if what she said become what she meant. That type of emotional clarity is a present, and after you experience it, whatever less feels hollow. She didn't do drama. She didn't manage. She didn't play warm and bloodless video games to hold me involved. She sincerely showed up as herself every day and gave me the distance to do the identical. Over time, I started to peer the layers underneath her energy. The quiet moments while she wished guide, however, didn't need to invite. The manner she carried her past with dignity, even the painful components. I saw how lots she gave to the human beings she cherished, frequently without looking forward to something in return. I noticed how she nurtured her community, how she stood up for what was right even if it fee her comfort. I started out to remember the fact that her honesty wasn't just a non-public trait. It became an act of resistance, of survival, of love. In an international that frequently attempts to mold human beings into something greater palatable, she remained defiantly proper to herself. Loving her taught me that honesty isn't pretty much fact-telling. It's about presence, about displaying up fully and letting yourself be visible. It's approximately giving others the danger to like you for who you're now, not who you fake to be. It's approximately deciding on courage over consolation, again and again. She never demanded love. She in no way asked me to trade. But being loved through her made me need to grow, no longer out of duty, however out of idea. I used to suppose love was something that swept you off your feet, but with her, love felt extra like status still within the middle of a typhoon and understanding which you're now not afraid anymore. Due to the fact you're no longer alone. Because someone sees you, without a doubt sees you and remains. She became that person for me. She continues to be that character for me. Falling in love with her honesty modified my existence. It modified how I move through the world, how I communicate to others, how I communicate to myself. It reminded me that reality isn't always the enemy of love, but its basis. And that once in a while, the maximum beautiful love memories aren't the loudest ones, but the ones constructed quietly, progressively, on trust, on fact, and on the form of honesty that holds you even when everything else falls away. And if I needed to trace the beginning of all of it, the instant the entirety began to shift, it wasn't a kiss or a romantic gesture. It changed into a communication. It turned into the manner she looked at me when I said something half-true, and he or she tilted her head, now not judging, simply ready. And that I realized I wanted to tell her the complete story. I wanted her to realize the real me. Because she had given me the present of her truth, and all I desired to do become give mine and go back. I fell in love with a black female not just because she was stunning, though she was, or because she changed into extremely well, even though she sincerely became. I fell in love along with her due to the fact she turned into sincere. And in a world that regularly feels a door, it runs on lies and illusions, that type of honesty is not just rare. It's innovative, it's sacred, and it's the reason I'll by no means forestall loving her. Loving her didn't suggest the whole thing changed into smooth. If something, it supposed I had to face matters I'd been keeping off for years, inner myself and outside. Her honesty had this ripple effect. Once it entered your life, it touched the whole thing. You couldn't cover in the back of the little lies you informed yourself anymore, the reasons, the masks. She didn't demand perfection, but she did require presence. And that I found out how often I'd long gone via life half-gift, 1/2 devoted, half of sincere. No longer maliciously, simply out of dependency. However, with her, every interaction mattered. Every silence had weight. Each word carried meaning. I don't forget the first time we argued, not one of these small, forgettable spats, but an actual one. The sort that forces you to invite whether what you're constructing collectively is robust sufficient to live to tell the tale, the storm. It wasn't loud or dramatic, however, it was actual. I misunderstood something she said, took it individually, reacted with defensiveness instead of interest. She didn't backpedal, didn't sugarcoat it. She sat with the anxiety. She permitted the silent stretch between us till I was the only who cracked, until I found out I wasn't even combating her. I used to be combating a few antique ghosts, some worry that had nothing to do along with her. And when I informed her that, when I subsequently were given honest with myself and her, she just nodded. She didn't say, "I informed you so." She didn't gloat. She simply said, "Thank you for being actual." Like that turned into the simplest thing that mattered. That night time changed something between us. It made the whole lot deeper, greater rooted. I commenced to remember that love wasn't about concord all of the time. It changed into about truth in each season, through warmth, through bloodless, through mess. She didn't run from warfare. She leaned in, no longer to combat, however to attach more fully. It wasn't about being proper, it changed into about staying open. And in a global where such a lot of human beings close down at the primary sign of trouble that turned into a type of love, I didn't realize how a good deal I needed until I felt it. I watched her pass through lifestyles with this quiet confidence that in no way demanded attention, but constantly earned admire. She confirmed up for her people, now not with grand gestures but with consistency. If she stated she'd be there, she became. If she said she cared, she meant it. And that I began noticing how human beings opened up round her, how they gravitated closer to her due to the fact they might feel that she wouldn't mislead them, even if the truth was difficult. Mainly then. Occasionally we'd sit down collectively in silence, and people were the moments I loved maximum. No overall performance, no effort, just presence. She'd lean her head on my shoulder, and we didn't want to fill the gap with words. Her honesty gave me the freedom to just be, not impress. No longer persuade. Just exist and be time-honored. And that, I realized, changed into the rarest present of all, but her honesty also extended into the arena round her. She didn't live quiet approximately in justice. She didn't decrease herself to in shape anybody's comfort. Being a black female in spaces that weren't constructed to include her brilliance or her obstacles intended, she become regularly challenged, doubted, wondered. However, she met all of it head-on, not with rage, although she had each proper to be irritated, however with readability. She didn't train people at no cost, didn't waste her time explaining her humanity, but she made certain you knew she saw the whole thing, that not anything would cross unchecked. Her sense of justice wasn't loud, however it became relentless. Looking her suggest for herself and others with a lot grace and energy made me recognize that love, too, is political. That selecting to love her meant standing beside her, no longer simply privately, but publicly. There had been days whilst the arena wore her down. I may want to see it in her eyes, the burden of navigating spaces where her well-worth was constantly beneath scrutiny. On those days, I didn't try to repair something. I just listened, held her, allow her fall apart, due to the fact even the most powerful humans want to. And in those moments, I loved her even greater. Not because she needed me, however because she permitted me in. Her vulnerability wasn't weakness, it turned into a bridge, and on every occasion she walked across it closer to me, I promised myself I'd meet her midway. Time surpassed, and the sector kept transferring, converting, pulling us in different instructions. However, she remained my anchor, now not in a manner that kept me still, however in a manner that jogged my memory where domestic turned into. We built something slowly, intentionally. No speeding, no skipping steps. She wasn't inquisitive about fairy tales. She wanted something real. And actual love, I learned, is built over time, through regular moments that turn out to be sacred just due to the fact they're shared. There has been one night time I'll never neglect. Simply we on the porch, taking note of tune that reminded her of home. She instructed me tales approximately her childhood, approximately the women who raised her, about the classes they passed down that also echoed in her nowadays. She spoke with reverence, with pleasure. I may want to see how deeply rooted she turned into, how much of her energy got here from generations of girls who had cherished fiercely, survived boldly, and in no way apologized for either. And as I listened, I found out how lots I nevertheless had to examine. About love, approximately resilience, approximately her. She as soon as informed me that honesty became her love language, that it wasn't approximately usually saying the proper thing, but about pronouncing the proper issue. Even when it was hard, even if it was frightening. That hit me in a way I didn't count on. It made me think of all the times I'd hidden the reality in past relationships, not to lie to, but to keep away from struggle. And how, in doing so, I'd constructed homes and not using a foundation. However, together with her, there has been no hiding. And so I told her things I'd by no means instructed all of us, approximately my fears, my failures, my disgrace. She held all of it without flinching, no longer due to the fact she saw me as damaged, but because she noticed me as human. Loving her has changed the manner I see the whole thing, the manner I circulate through the world, the way I speak to myself. I've discovered that honesty isn't pretty much telling the reality, it's about dwelling in it, proudly owning it, and sharing it with the folks who remember. She taught me that, not with lectures, however, with presence, with how she lives, with how she loves. Some days I take a look at her, and that I nonetheless feel that quiet awe, that disbelief that I am getting to love someone so actual, so grounded, so unapologetically herself. I don't take it without any consideration. I never will, because she ought to have chosen 100 special paths, 100 special people. However, she chose me. Now not due to the fact I was best, but because I was inclined to develop, and every day I pick out her again. There got here an afternoon when we sat throughout from every different, the sun placing slow and golden outdoor the window, portray her skin in that acquainted tender mild that always made me forestall and stare for a second too long. We weren't speaking plenty, just sharing quiet, the way we regularly did. She was sipping tea, her palms wrapped across the mug like she changed into grounding herself in something consistent. I watched her for an extended second, no longer because I had something to mention, but due to the fact I knew I used to be witnessing something rare, something well worth remembering in element, the curve of her mouth whilst she became at peace, the soft upward push and fall of her breath while she turned into deep in notion. And in that silence, it hit me in a way it hadn't earlier than, this became it, not the stop, however the entire of it, the factor, the region all of the moments had caused. Now not a grand statement or some film scene climax, however this, two human beings completely themselves, absolutely seen, selecting each different again and again within the tender everyday of existence. I reached throughout the table, and he or she met my hand halfway, her fingers sliding into mine like they'd been looking ahead to that small gesture. No phrases have been needed, but I said them anyway, not due to the fact she didn't already recognize, but due to the fact some truths need to be spoken aloud. I told her I loved her, no longer the concept of her, now not a few polished model, but her as she became. I informed her I was grateful, no longer just for her presence in my life, however for the way she showed me who I will be when I stopped hiding. And she smiled, that slow, understanding smile that said she'd visible all of me and loved me nonetheless. That was the closing piece I wished. Now, not to finish me, due to the fact she never attempted to do this. However, to remind me that real love, honest love, doesn't complete you. It expands you. It challenges you. It makes room on your complete self and asks which you do the equal for a person else. We didn't need promises carved in stone or elaborate vows. Our commitment became within the living, inside the way we navigated storms, inside the manner we again to the desk, even when things got quiet, even when they were given tough. And because the mile diminished and the arena outdoor darkened into night, I checked out her and felt no doubt, no question. Just that calm actuality that I had observed something real, something worth preserving, something worth growing antique beside. And that, greater than something, became the stop of the story. Now not because the affection ended, but due to the fact the quest had. Due to the fact whilst I found her, honest and complete and unapologetically herself, I discovered the whole thing I didn't recognize I was lacking. And that I knew, with no need to speak it out loud, that I would carry this love, the only born from her honesty, for the relaxation of my life.